Looks like the clown show continues to go on in the Indiana Fever organization led by Amber Cox, clown show, Kelly Krauskopf, clown show, and the bozo of all bozos, head coach Stephanie White, who's just, all of them, they are just sabotaging Caitlin Clark's career. It looks like GM Andrew Cox fires off on Caitlin Clark fans on social media and starts blocking them as well. This is an immature, nasty organization. Caitlin Clark and her agent Aaron Kane need to demand a trade immediately. Welcome to Keep the Vision. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share the channel.
The Indiana Fever are facing a serious crisis after a trade demand was officially made, leaving the organization scrambling to respond. Reports are now surfacing that there may have been a deliberate effort to limit Caitlin Clark's impact on the team, and team management is working hard to get ahead of the story before it spirals further. This goes beyond concerns about poor coaching decisions. There are now questions about whether the most talked about player in basketball was intentionally being held back. Head coach Stephanie White and her staff are finding themselves under increasing pressure as more details about their questionable choices start becoming public knowledge.
Organization, Caitlin Clark and her agent Aaron Kane need to demand a trade immediately. Welcome to Keep the Vision. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share the channel, hit that bell notification, and hype the video. That'd be greatly appreciated. Let's get right into things. So we all watched the travesty that took place last night, and Stephanie White trying to crash out on Caitlin Clark, Raven Johnson fouling out in 9 minutes. I mean, it just was a complete joke by Stephanie White. I think she exposed herself. I think she exposed the fact that she's not a good coach at all, and she needs to be fired. And if you don't want to fire her,
Amber Cox, the team's general manager, has been very active on social media lately, blocking fans and posting responses that come across as defensive and panicked, rather than taking the time to address the legitimate concerns of the people who buy tickets and support the team. She appears to be treating loyal fans as the opposition. She has been called out for going after supporters online, particularly those who raise questions about how the team handled Caitlin Clark's unexpected absence from a recent game. This kind of behavior from a senior executive is unusual and raises serious questions about what might actually be going wrong behind the scenes within the organization.
And then he also had this today. He had a bunch of things to say. So we got Amber Cox blocking Caitlin Clark fans, right? Because she can't handle the heat, so she need to get her ass up out the kitchen and get up out of here. Get your ass up out the kitchen and get up out of here. She can't handle the heat and the pressure that's coming with this, and she's bewilting under the pressure. Okay, Jason Whitlock has had this to say. Check this out. Here it says, these four women put the alphabet mafia agenda above basketball business. Your personal life should be your personal life. It should not be your business agenda.
Things took a sharper turn when Cox reportedly began blocking well-known media figures like Jason Whitlock simply for raising valid observations about the team. When a general manager starts shutting out journalists and fans rather than engaging with their concerns, it is a strong signal that the pressure has become too much to handle. She appears to be struggling with the responsibility of managing a once-in-a-generation player, and her response has been to block critics and act as though the feedback does not exist. It is the kind of reaction that raises real doubts about the leadership at the top of this organization and whether the right people are in place to handle a situation of this magnitude.
Above basketball business, your personal life should be your personal life. It should not be your business agenda. Okay, and these are the four who are responsible for the sabotage of Caitlin Clark. And you too, Lynn Dunn is a part of the sabotage of Caitlin Clark. Obviously, Bozo the Clown, Stephanie White is a part of the sabotage of Stephanie White's a part of the sabotage of Caitlin Clark. GM Amber Cox, I don't do no scouting. I can't put a roster together to save my life. Amber Cox is a part of the sabotage. And president of basketball operations.
Stephanie White's coaching decisions in the last game raised serious concerns and left many people questioning whether she has a clear plan at all. In just the first quarter alone, she rotated 11 different players onto the court, a move that left both analysts and fans completely baffled. You simply do not cycle through that many players in such a short period of time if your goal is to build momentum and let your starting lineup find their footing. In most professional sports settings, a decision like that would have serious consequences for a a coach's job security. Yet in Indiana, it is somehow being passed off as a legitimate tactical choice. And that is exactly why the conversation around intentional sabotage is starting to feel harder to dismiss.
Like they were playing 3 games in 4 nights. It was actually Portland playing its 3rd game in 4 nights. Steph played 11 players in the first quarter. Wrong coach. 11 players in the first quarter is an atrocity. It is a fireable offense. It is a fireable offense. You got Amber Cox blocking Jason Whitlock because he's being honest and keeping it real about what is going on with the Indiana Fever. They played 11 damn players in the first quarter. They put Ty Harris into the game before they subbed Caitlin Clark back in.
One question that has everyone talking right now is why Ty Harris was put back into the game ahead of Caitlin Clark, the team's franchise player. After Stephanie White's latest round of puzzling coaching calls, that decision stood out as particularly hard to explain. To many watching, it looked like a calculated move to disrupt Clark's momentum at a critical point in the game. This is not something that can be written off as a one-time mistake anymore. A clear pattern is forming that suggests the coaching staff may be working against the very player they should be building around. Treating your biggest star like a backup is a serious problem, and word is that the frustration from Clark's side has now grown well beyond quiet disappointment and into something much more confrontational.
The fix isn't in? Y'all don't believe the fix is in? Come on, man. A blind man could see this. This organization is a joke and a clown show. He also had this to say: if the Indiana Fever are run like a business, the decision to build around Caitlin Clark is easy. If the Indiana Fever are part of the WNBA's LGBTQ's agenda, then decisions are complicated and Caitlin Clark will be sacrificed. And it seems to be clear as day. It seems to be clear as day what they have decided.
4 women at the top of the Indiana Fever organization are now at the center of all the criticism. Lynn Dunn, Stephanie White, Amber Cox, and Kelly Krauskopf. Observers are pointing fingers at this group, accusing them of deliberately working to prevent Caitlin Clark from standing out and becoming too dominant within the league's existing structure. The claim is that personal interests are being placed ahead of what is best for the team, and that this mindset is slowly tearing apart the chemistry and trust within the roster. When the people responsible for running a team are allegedly not invested in seeing their best player thrive, the entire organization begins to crack from the inside, and that appears to be exactly what is happening in Indiana right now.
He also had this to say: if the Indiana Fever are run like a business, the decision to build around Caitlin Clark is easy. If the Indiana Fever are part of the WNBA's LGBTQ's agenda, then decisions are complicated and Caitlin Clark will be sacrificed. And it seems to be clear as day. It seems to be clear as day what they have decided. It seems to be clear as day what they've decided. This organization is not doing right by Caitlin Clark. This organization is a circus.
Jason Whitlock was direct and unapologetic in his criticism, accusing the Fever's leadership of putting personal and political priorities ahead of the goal of actually winning basketball games. His position is that Caitlin Clark is being used as a pawn in a broader power struggle playing out within the WNBA. The argument being made is that those running the organization are more focused on their own social image and personal interests than they are on creating a winning environment around one of the most gifted shooters the game has ever seen. If even a portion of these claims turns out to be accurate, it would go a long way toward explaining why so many of the decisions coming out of Indiana have seemed to go against basic common sense from a basketball standpoint.
You've done a disservice to the WNBA, and that's why Amber and Kelly has to leave also. See, y'all got this little weird relationship because y'all was all part of the organization years ago and whatnot, so y'all feel like y'all can do no wrong. Y'all are literally destroying the reason why people wanted to watch this motherfucker in the first place after 30 years.
Exactly. This
is crazy. You are a fucking horrible coach.
Typical.
Shout out to Angry Fan Sports. Y'all go over there and subscribe. They are destroying the very thing that got everybody paid, that got
The defensive strategies being run by Stephanie White have drawn some of the harshest criticism of her coaching tenure, with many calling them among the worst tactical decisions seen in the sport. Her approach of switching all 5 players regardless of size or position repeatedly creates impossible matchups, often leaving a smaller guard with the impossible task of defending a much larger center in the paint. Any experienced coach would recognize and correct that problem almost immediately, yet White continues to stick with it night after night. Some are beginning to wonder whether the defensive breakdowns are actually intentional, serving as a convenient excuse to pull key players or shift attention away from deeper issues within the team. Adding fuel to the fire is the fact that this entire management group has a shared history of working together in the past, and critics are now suggesting that these personal relationships and internal loyalties are clouding judgment and driving the Fever straight into the ground. What has developed inside the Indiana Fever organization looks very much like a closed circle where close friendships protect everyone from being held responsible for poor results. In the process, they appear to be actively dismantling the very thing that brought massive new attention and millions of fresh eyes to the WNBA, and doing so without any visible sense of urgency or remorse. Rather than surrounding Caitlin Clark with the shooters and athletic defenders she needs to thrive, the front office has made a series of roster moves that have left fans and analysts completely puzzled. The first offseason was spent chasing players who had no real fit within the system, and the second saw big money committed to veterans who have simply not made a meaningful difference on the court. This points to a serious breakdown in scouting and a fundamental misunderstanding of what it takes to build a winning team around an elite point guard. Amber Cox is taking the brunt of the blame for failing to assemble a roster that makes sense, and at this point, the pattern of poor decisions is so consistent that many are no longer willing to give her the benefit of the doubt. The intense spotlight that came with Caitlin Clark's arrival clearly caught this organization completely off guard, and rather than stepping up to meet the moment, they have retreated into a defensive and resentful posture that is difficult to watch. The bigger problem seems to be that certain people within the front office are more bothered by the fact that Clark generates more attention than the team's modest achievements than they are about actually competing for a championship. When an organization develops that kind of bitterness toward its own best player, the working relationship is essentially finished with no realistic path back. Compare that to how other franchises handle their stars. Teams built around players like Aja Wilson or Paige Buchers do not pull their best player off the court 4 minutes into the first quarter without a clear reason, and their coaches are not running confusing 11-player rotations in the middle of a competitive stretch. Those organizations have figured out something very simple. If you want to win, you build your game plan around your best players, and you trust them to deliver when it matters most. Stephanie White's approach is doing a real disservice to the WNBA and to the fans who showed up specifically because they wanted to watch the most exciting player in the league perform at her best. On top of the coaching concerns, Amber Cox has reportedly shown a troubling level of resentment toward the way the media chooses to cover her team. She is said to have taken to social media to complain that news of Clark's late scratch was getting more coverage than the team's win over a struggling Portland side. That kind of jealousy directed at your own player from someone in a general manager role is almost unheard of and sends a clear signal that the leadership structure is seriously compromised. The people running this organization seem to want the credit and the recognition without being willing to acknowledge that Clark is the sole reason the rest of the country is paying any attention to Indiana basketball right now. The real kicker is that the same Portland team they were so publicly proud of defeating recently came back and handed the Fever a crushing and embarrassing blowout loss, making that moment of celebration look even more misplaced in hindsight.